Hi, John Dara here, and today I'd like to circle back on the executive life of New York story. Over the last year or so, while the matter has been in the limelight in financial circles, I've written a large number of blogs examining all different aspects of the executive life of New York story, offering some historical perspective. Mark Walsham and I have done a number of podcasts, both individually and together, examining different aspects of this topic. So yesterday, August 1st, 2013, Channel 6 ABC in the Philadelphia region publishes a story called Cautionary Tale About Annuities, a story by Nydia Hahn. It's actually a very, very good story, and it drives home on a point that I've made consistently since this Executive Life of New York story has come out. And that is that you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. Now let me just go back to the Executive Life of New York story, or the crux of the story, which is that 1,500 people are going to have their benefits cut as a result of the now approved liquidation of Executive Life of New York. Many of the folks who are among the 1,500, these annuities were set up in the 1980s, so 30 plus years ago. We've certainly covered what was known at the time, what should have been known at the time, and we're not castigating any victims, we're not castigating anybody at this point, but there was, in my opinion, a tremendous amount of information, certainly enough information for people to not put all their eggs in one basket, even if they were attracted to the extremely high, over-the-top high Executive Life of New York rates. So there's a woman by the name of, I believe it's Catherine Lawley, who is interviewed, and she had, when she was 2 years old, she suffered the tragedy of the loss of her father in a medical malpractice situation, and her mother did a sensible thing, which was to put her child into a structured settlement that would start paying her when she's 25. An age when people tend to be a little bit more mature. Unfortunately, all the eggs did go into one basket, and she's facing a 54% reduction, and some other people are also facing reductions. Some people are going to have their benefits enhanced by a hardship fund. It's not clear whether or not Ms. Lawley is going to participate in that, but I'm not trying to castigate this particular victim. The point is, and has been underscored in this particular video by Edward Stone, who's an attorney who represents a number of ELNY victims, and was one of the two law firms spearheading a class action lawsuit that was dismissed without prejudice back in February. Eddie Stone talks about that people shouldn't put all their eggs in one basket, and he talks about other things that people ought to look at when they're seeking to buy annuities. And that's exactly my point, and that was exactly my point when we did the previous videos. If you go back to 1985, 1982, there was plenty of information out there, articles written that should have raised some red flags, and at the very least, if they were going to take some executive life, they should have diversified and perhaps put something into New York Life or MetLife or whatever other carriers that were out there. Even if it meant not getting the most benefit, it was diversifying the risk. And that's a lesson that one can take with us today. If you've got a large settlement, I've recently had the benefit of working on several large settlements this year, and each of those cases, the structure was diversified. One case with 2, another case with 5, another case with 4. And in many cases, the diversification helps. Diversification is extremely important. There are different ways to diversify. You can diversify what I call front-back, where you have one company taking on the initial years and another company or companies taking on the later years, or you can have what's called a horizontal diversification, where you start off with multiple companies to reduce the risk. Now, insurance companies overall are safe institutions. The executive life situation is a bit of an anomaly, and there are reasons that Attorney Stone has alleged regarding the management of the executive life of New York estate. But when you look at the majority of companies that have consistently been selling structured settlement annuities since the beginning, these are companies that have been around for the most part, several of them before the Civil War, and many of them since the beginning of the last century. Executive life was not around for that long, and certainly was not as prominent as it was during that fateful period in the early 1980s, early to mid 1980s, when the majority of these 1,500 people's structured settlements were set up. I do wish to add that the ABC piece talks about annuities in general. The 1,500 people are all exclusively, from what my understanding is, structured settlement annuitants. Structured settlement annuitants are not necessarily, they are consumers, but they're consumers that have help, meaning that if it's a minor, there's a guardian. If there's a minor, there's a judge overseeing the transaction. There are attorneys from both sides looking over the transaction. And certainly, the diversification is a very, very important part, but it's also important that the people that are advising the people, the victims, people who are victims may not, their state at the time that they're making these financial decisions is, may be emotionally charged because of years of litigation. They may be sophisticated, may be unsophisticated. Who knows, unless you're actually right there in the moment. But the point is that advisors, attorneys, and judges also need to keep this information on their radar and make sure that there's adequate diversification. I truly believe in 2013 and beyond. Even before 2013, before the executive life of New York crisis, I think that people are in tune with the diversification issue. But if anything, the executive life of New York story and the story of these 1,500 unfortunate folks is something that brings it to the forefront and underscores the importance of it. Thank you. I'm John Dare. Have a great day.